So we're chatting today about bridging philanthropy and impact investing to help individuals like yourself or organizations use their money for good. And we're really going to take a close up and firsthand look at how we can create true impact for real businesses and organizations through charitable donations and through impact investments. So kind of contrasting the two spaces of charitable giving with this kind of newer concept called impact investing, which we'll hear more about. So we'll also have a chance to speak with organizations that are raising funds through GiveWise and through Goparity. And of course, we're going to hear a little bit more about how each of the respective platforms are helping individuals like yourself give their money for good in kind of this modern day setting. So on that note, I'll hand it over to Emily and Jessica just to give some quick intros to themselves. And then we'll have Amina and Harv introduce themselves briefly. So Emily, over to you.
Thanks, Aditi, for the intro. Hi, everyone. I'm Emily Mercy. I'm the co-founder and managing director of Goparity Canada. We are an impact investment platform that allows individuals and organizations to invest in Canadian small and medium-sized business projects that create positive social and environmental good.
Awesome. Thank you. I'm excited for this conversation. So my name's Jessica Rain. I'm donor relations advocate with GiveWise Foundation. So GiveWise Foundation is a registered charity, and we focus on really bridging and connecting donors with charities and really our mission is to spread generosity. So we've built a platform that allows for easy processing of donations and giving of funds that could support charities in doing the great work that they do. And so I'm really excited for this conversation today.
Thank you for inviting me to be on this panel. So my name is Amina Mohamed. I am the founder and executive director of a Canadian charity called Cameras for Girls. We are on the GiveWise platform and soon to be on the Give Genius platform. Jessica will tell you more. And we, as a Canadian charity working internationally, we work in Africa, we have limited resources for fundraising. So with platforms like GiveWise, it allows us to attract donors through donor advised funds and other platforms of giving. And so it's been a really amazing journey, and I'm hoping to learn more as I sit here today.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, hey everyone, my name is Harv. I'm the CEO and founder of Build Smartr Robotics, where our goal is to enable the mass production of housing. We want to get to the lowest cost per linear foot to build a wall, which is the Lego brick of any building. It just so happens to be it's using recycled steel, and it's a much more resilient building. So we're building these non-combustible buildings all over BC right now, non-combustible homes, cheaper than wood, believe it or not. And that's all enabled by automation and 3D modeling. I'm actually on site right now. I'd love to kind of show everyone the site when I kind of present here.
Perfect. Thanks so much, Harv. I'm looking forward to seeing some real-time footage of the site. So at this point, we'll start with the first half of the panel, which is more focused on GiveWise. So Jessica, let's start with you. I have a few questions written down here. My first one is, what does modern day philanthropy mean to you? If you want to share a few words around that.
Yes, absolutely. So modern philanthropy, I mean, we know that language even right now has changed so much. I think folks, and even the language that we use now is like generosity. In a lot of ways, folks used to think of philanthropy as, writing checks and people who were wealthy and powerful. But now we're seeing, because of the world that we live in and how connected we are, that philanthropy is generosity in any form, right? It could be monetary, it could be through the exchange of ideas, various different resources, time, strategic thinking. So there's so many other ways that we look at it now. And I think the the beauty of it now in modern day is that it's more accessible because of technology. It's not just about writing checks. It's not just exclusive or inclusive to those who have a lot of money, right? So, yeah, modern day philanthropy to me is more about connectivity. It's about connection. It's about connecting to your heart and what matters, and finding ways that you can support in everyday aspects of your life. So not just around giving season when it's Christmas, when people think, oh yeah, this is the time where I should be generous. This is when I should know. But actually, what are we doing day to day? How is giving and generosity incorporated into our workplace, into things that we already do each and every day. So that's really what we do at GiveWise, is trying to make it as, simple and transparent and as easy to be a part of your day-to-day thinking and living.
Yeah. Yeah. I love how you almost break down philanthropy into these like granular pieces of generosity that kind of infuse every part of our life. They don't necessarily need to be just giving money, but it can have so many meanings, right?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
So I'm wondering, you talked a little bit about technology and how that's shaping philanthropy, but could you dig a little bit deeper into some of the key trends that you're seeing shape charitable giving?
Yeah, well, I mean, in right now, I mean, technology, we see it through social media, right? There's so many great organizations, including ours, that are supporting and equipping people with tools so that they can do great fundraising, right? So that they can share their stories with the world, so that they can, easily provide places to give through URL links or buttons and sharing across social media. So I think it's definitely around the social media piece. But also, I think really thinking about, and I touched on it a bit when I think about trends like corporate social responsibility. And I look at that because I think that is one of those ways of like, folks are seeing that, especially these bigger businesses, that it's important to put profit to purpose, and not everyone's doing it at the same level. But in order to actually attract great talent as well, like, because in this generation, people want to work with people who are aligned with their values. So it is important for people, right? So we're seeing a trend of more people wanting to incorporate these into their workplaces, into their teams. Like, how can we connect with our community? How can we connect with global issues that are impacting maybe the work that we do or anyone personally? But it's like creating community within your workplace, within the work that you're doing, so that you can make a difference. So I think those are some of the trends that we're seeing, and just the autonomy that folks want. So before, I feel like giving was very calculated. You go to the charity at a particular time, um, or you're asked, there's a request. But now folks, I think there's more agency, more autonomy, more like, how can we peer-to-peer fundraising, crowd fundraising? How can I take this initiative up and lead this, right? Like, how can I do something and lead a group to make a difference with this cause that's aligned with my heart? So you find a lot of just solo leadership, right? For folks who want to take the lead and do something great. They might not even be attached to an organization, but they just feel the need to do something amazing and collectively get people involved in it. So I think those are some of the trends you're seeing lately. And I think that it goes back to the piece of this connectivity, right?
Yeah, it's so true, Jessica. Like, connectivity in these days is giving way and giving power to communities and people who maybe wouldn't have had the opportunity to give in this way in the past. And I really like this framing around crowd lending and crowd giving, and really think at this point want to draw Emily into the conversation here, because for those of you who are just meeting, Emily and Goparity for the first time, a huge pillar of the model is crowd lending and bringing community together. So my question to you, Emily, is if you could tell us, just to give some background, what is impact investing and how is it different from traditional investments? And yeah, if you can also give a little bit of context around why crowd lending is so important in this conversation of impact investing.
For sure. I'll start with kind of the idea of impact investing, because when we talk about investing in general, it encompasses a really broad range of financial tools. On one end of the spectrum, you have what you'd probably think of when you imagine a traditional investment. So investing in the stock market. You choose companies and add funds which pool a bunch of you choose companies, you can choose funds, which pool a bunch of different companies, and actually buy shares or a piece of ownership, equity stake in these companies and funds, with the intention that those funds, those shares will increase in value. And that increase in value is, of course, how you earn money. And typically when people make investments, their goal is to maximize their earnings. So grow their money as much as possible. So that is one side of the spectrum, money first. And then there's the opposite end of the spectrum. And so I really, as well, enjoyed the framing that Jessica put around philanthropy or generosity, as you put it. But the sole purpose being to support a cause, create real change or impact in that area that aligns with our values. And oftentimes we see these as people find themselves on both of these ends of the spectrum and not so much in the middle, but maybe doing both simultaneously. So impact investing, along with many other types of socially responsible investments, actually do fall in between these two areas. So it considers our values, but also the fact that we want to make a financial return. And you might have heard of terms like ESG, so environmental social governance, clean or green funds, responsible investment portfolios. You can think of these like the first step away from traditional investments towards a more values-aligned approach. These investments do consider factors that socially and environmentally conscious investors might care about, but they're usually not actively working towards creating positive impact for a specific cause. The goal with ESG, responsible investments, clean funds, green funds, all those kind of labels that you hear in investing, it's to have investments that still prioritize financial return while avoiding industries that many of us might consider problematic. So impact investing is taking that next step more towards generosity, towards that value alignment. The goal of impact investing is to use your investment dollars to create change towards a cause you care about while also earning a profit. So it's, I think, much more aligned with kind of the values and beliefs that GiveWise would have and what Jessica was talking about than a traditional investment. And another key aspect of impact investing is that it's a measurement rather than a label. So instead of just being labeled impact, investors understand the qualitative and quantitative outcomes that occur from that investment. And to answer the second part of your question, the reason why it's so important that we kind of do this through a crowd and through a community is, so Goparity uses a crowd lending model. It's basically like crowdfunding, where you pool a bunch of small contributions together and contribute those contributions to a specific organization. Instead of a donation or an equity investment, we use a loan, so it works like any small business loan would. And it's really important because of a key factor of accessibility. By coming together as a community, we can create the same or greater impact from even a dollar perspective than that a large organization can, or a government, or these huge investors that you see. Oftentimes when you're an individual without much capital, you feel excluded from this space because you feel like, well, what real difference is my money going to make? When we work together, we can pool our funds and create some real change, be a part of some real impact. So that's why these kind of community methods are just so important to help us not only move the needle, but also just be a part of this space and be voting with our investment dollars.
Yeah, thanks so much for that context, Emily. And I mean, to tie off the panel section, this part of the panel, I'm just wondering, and I have a question to the both of you. Hearing about Goparity and GiveWise, they're both developing these new models of engaging community. And I'm wondering, from your perspectives respectively, why is it so important that we do develop innovative and practical tools to drive social impact? And thinking about this both from the philanthropic side and through the investment side, why are these innovations and tools so important? Let's start with Jessica on this one.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think you'll hear it from, I think it's really important. I think at GiveWise, we understand the donors and we understand the charities and the need for, making everything much simpler and easier. There's been so many barriers to folks wanting to give in the past, or feeling that they did not have the ability to give. And it was about creating something that made it very easy. But even when we think about all of the fees that are associated sometimes with particular platforms and what that does for the experiences of donors, right? I want to give this, but if it takes so much out of it to give, not only in the physical experience, but also out of the money, then what's the point? So I think that it was very important for us to figure out like what kind of model could we support with that. How could we support people in being more strategic about their giving, but how could we support charities who have to deal, with many who may have small teams, less resources to actually administer all of this and go through these processes? How can we make it easier for them? So I think it was very important for us to figure out how we could do that and build a platform that allowed that, to make it seamless. And so, yeah, it's really about listening to what folks want and they want to give, but they need a better way to do that, better methods. And again, back to that connectivity and that community minded piece. So, so important, making it easy to include folks in that.
Yeah, yeah. And what I'm hearing here, Jessica, is like there's a bit of a gap that exists in the giving space, on the technology side and bridging the community to the generosity. And I'm wondering, Emily, if you can share also from an investment perspective, is something similar happening in the investment space? And, why is it so important that we're developing these tools from that perspective?
Definitely. Definitely seeing a very similar gap in the investment space. Until very recently, impact investing was not accessible for the majority of Canadians. Until recently, even to just offer investments that were not available on the stock market, so what's called private market investments, took a lot of labor and paperwork just to abide by Canadian securities regulations. Now, with new technological models and automation, we've been able to make huge strides in making this process more efficient, more cost-effective, and therefore providing this type of investment to really the 99% of Canadians who previously lacked access to it. And at Goparity, that's kind of the biggest way that we've innovated. Of course, it all comes back to accessibility, but what we've done is taken this kind of sophisticated technological model and a deep understanding of the Canadian regulatory environment in order to bring accessibility into a space that has been for a long time very old school, not automated, and kind of honestly technologically behind. And for the second part of your question, why it's important, there's an enormous funding gap in addressing global challenges outlined by the United Nations Sustainable Development Goals, the SDGs. So there's an estimated $2.5 trillion annual shortfall in investment in these goals. And so it's clear that traditional funding sources have been insufficient to meet this very big need. And it's not the amount of capital that's available, because there is enough capital, even if we look at non-accredited Canadian private wealth. And so non-accredited just means excluding the top 1% of Canadians. So if we look at non-accredited Canadian private wealth, the majority of everyday folks, Canadian folks, we have enough money in our private wealth to meet this global gap. So there is the funding, and there are some models that allow us to participate in impact investing. And every year we get more opportunities and better opportunities to make impact investments. But for the most part, there are still huge barriers for Canadians to access this type of investment. So the gap is clearly accessibility. And that's why it's so important that we use technology to bridge that gap. And so at Goparity, we really pride ourselves on being the most accessible impact investment platform in Canada. Our minimum investment amount is $10. Really, anyone can participate at that rate. I think when I was kind of before Goparity, when I was looking to impact invest myself, the lowest I could find was $10,000. So big difference there. And it's because of our crowd lending model. So I did touch on it earlier that crowd lending is under the umbrella of crowdfunding. You pool a bunch of small contributions together to make a larger sum. And then the lending part is basically loaning out your contribution to a borrower, acting like a small business loan, and then periodically getting repaid the principal or original amount you lent out, plus you earn interest. And to touch on the accessibility again, for a lot of people, that was probably confusing. And this whole concept of investing, debt, interest, even on the equity side is very confusing. And so again, you can use technology to make that language more accessible. So what we do is we have an investment simulation feature. So you just input how much you want to invest in the project you want to invest in, and then you'll be provided with a detailed layout of what that will look like financially for you. I think we live in an online age. We live in the age of algorithms. So we should use these algorithms to make things like impact finance easy, self-directed, economically efficient. And yeah, modern day investing means using modern technologies to make this accessible.
Yeah. Thanks so much for touching on the accessibility side, Emily. I think it's one of the biggest gaps that many Canadian investors face when it comes to impact investing. So I'm just going to move back to Jessica here and GiveWise. I'm wondering, Jessica, you've talked a lot about community and generosity, and I'm wondering if you could tell us a little bit more about GiveWise and what donor advised funds are and the benefits of this model. So just, giving a little bit of an overview of what GiveWise's model is and how people can participate.
Absolutely. Well, I don't know how many folks know about donor advised funds. So basically with GiveWise, that's what we're a donor advised fund sponsor. So what that means is a donor advised fund is basically a charitable bank account. So it is your giving wallet. So once you contribute into that giving wallet, you get an immediate tax receipt. But the great thing about it is you get the flexibility to grant that money to charities over time. So with a lot of platforms, you'll see that if you want to give somewhere, you give one time or you give recurring, but you have to make that decision on the spot. You have to make that decision. You have to know where you're going to do it. You got to know when you're going to do it. With a donor advised fund, you are the advisor of that fund. You have it's almost like you have the authority to give it when you feel like you'd like to give it. However, you get the tax receipt right away, right? So it's definitely more strategic. In terms of tax savings for a lot of folks, people will have the benefit of, if they're donating complex assets like securities, they can use that tax savings for their next tax return time, right? So what makes our donor advised fund so different though, and this goes back to what Emily was talking about with accessibility is, a lot of financial institutions have donor advised funds. They are sponsors of donor advised funds, but require large minimums to have a donor advised fund. So it's kind of an exclusive kind of, for folks who can bring at least, $25,000 to the table to open up an account like that. With GiveWise, we make it easy. Again, we eliminate all that paperwork. It takes 3 minutes to sign up for an account. There's no minimums for having an account. And we make sure that folks who have an account that's less than 25,000 don't have to pay fees on it. So that's one thing in terms of how we address the accessibility with a donor advised fund, because typically donor advised funds do require a certain amount of minimum before you can actually have one, right? But the beauty of it gives you the flexibility to really think strategically about how you want to give. And folks who work with financial advisor are able to say, okay, say I'm working with $5,000 this year or 500, or I'm working with 500,000. I can put that into my giving account and then decide at a later date what charities am I going to give to regularly? What kind of needs come up within the year that require, donations because, natural disasters or whatever it may be. But you're doing it in a really strategic way that becomes a part of your, financial planning in a different way. The other beauty is that for folks who have $25,000 or more, we do charge fees for that, but they can have an investment account. So they can actually invest their money to grow in that account. So now you have charitable money that's being invested and that's growing so that you can give more to charities, right? So it's just a very strategic tool to have. And really allows the donor that flexibility, right? So again, I would say with GiveWise, even though donor advised funds are held by other institutions, by other registered charities or public foundations, with GiveWise, we're really trying to ensure that anyone can open up a donor advised fund. Anyone, you can contribute nothing to your fund, but I mean, what would be the point of opening up a fund? but you can donate as little as, so there's folks who have, giving funds that have, maybe $50 in it, and they're donating $10, and then there's folks who have $1 million accounts, right? So it just shows you that it's really for anyone and everyone, any walk of life. And again, another thing that we pride ourselves in is what we support charities to accept, like cryptocurrency. So a lot of folks can't accept that. credit card, donor advised fund transfers, securities, complex assets, as I mentioned. So these are all things that folks can donate to the charities that they'd like. It's really important. The accessibility piece is very important, and understanding that, with a donor advised fund, you are literally, that's your charitable wallet, and you can think about giving in a different way, a very strategic way.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yeah. It's very innovative. It's very new. I think what GiveWise has done here, but needed as well, because it provides that flexibility and autonomy over your charitable giving that I just don't think we've seen before, at least in the Canadian landscape. So that's amazing, Jessica, in terms of, what GiveWise is doing. And I'm also thinking, could you tell everyone a little bit more about when people go to use their money in a charitable way through GiveWise, what kind of impacts can they expect to see?
Yeah, absolutely. So at GiveWise, we are connected to all charities, all registered charities in Canada. So sorry, my son, the phone is. So we are connected to all charities. So I will show you after how you could actually search up the charity that you would like to give to, and how you can do that pretty seamless. And the beauty of it is, you can give to multiple charities and get one tax receipt. So it doesn't have to be, where's that tax receipt when I need it? What charity? Like, you can make it so easy on one platform. So the impact, so we work with a lot of great folks. And do we have direct relationships with all charities? Not all, right? But I mean, Amina is one that we really have a great relationship with. And she has been amazing, really focused on supporting women in Uganda with Cameras for Girls, and really focusing on, gender equality, and really developing skills to be world leaders and change makers, right? So I think that's a great segue for Amina to share.
Yeah. Thanks so much, Jessica, for that transition there. And Amina, I would love to hear a little bit more, um, about Cameras for Girls, but the story behind Cameras for Girls and what the organization does.
Sure. Thank you for that prop up, Jessica. So as I said in the previous intro, so we are a Canadian charity, and I founded and lead Cameras for Girls since 2018. I started this because my family and I are refugees from Uganda, and we came in 1972. And I grew up in Canada with all these incredible opportunities. I worked in film and television for 15 years. I had an incredible career as a photographer, storyteller, visual storyteller, and director. And I went to Uganda for the first time on a discovery trip in 2007. But also to do a documentary about the plight of the Indians who had been forced to leave under the Idi Amin rule. And we had 90 days to leave that country. And we grew up in Canada, but always with that tie back home. And so when I went back, the poverty was one thing that shook me, but most importantly was the plight of women and girls. I was meeting young women who had been married off at 14, because in a patriarchal society where they're not valued, their voices are not honored, there is no, if there is a parent has to choose between educating their boys over their girls, they're going to choose their their boys. And women are relegated to household duties or getting married early, and it made me angry. But I didn't know at the time, this was 2007, how to take my career in film and television and as a storyteller and marry it with what I envisioned of going back and making a difference. And it wasn't until I left film and television that I came up with the idea in 2017. And I thought about taking, photography skills that I had and going to the northern part of Uganda to teach people who had been survivors of child trafficking or child soldiers. But there was no internet there was no electricity. And it was actually a journalist friend who told me about women who cannot get jobs, even with skills, just because they lack a camera, which is unaffordable for most, and don't know how to use it. Yet men didn't have the same challenge. So it was immediately like, oh, this is where I can make a difference. So came up with the idea in 2017, 2018, we did our first test workshop, and here we are 6 years later. We are in Uganda, we are in Tanzania, next year in Kenya. Our vision is to impact 30,000 women in 7 African countries by 2030. And back to your point, Emily, of working within the SDGs, the United Nations SDGs. We follow number 1, no poverty, number 5, gender equality, number 8, fair jobs and opportunities, and number 17, partnership for the goals. And when you talk about funding for this kind of work, because again, we are Canadian, but we work in Africa, is very few and far between opportunities. We can't get government funding because we're too small. Most foundations will look at us and say, well, you don't have the Canadian aspect to it. And I'm fighting with the board to register in Africa, so we can tap into that funding. But when you get partners like GiveWise who can bring donors to your doorstep and show them the power of their dollar at work, that's where the marriage and the beauty of that all happens. So I'll be going back in March to train 5 more cohorts of 15 girls each, thanks to a grant that we got earlier this year with Estee Lauder. And we will be back in July in Tanzania and expanding to Kenya. So our biggest expense is cameras. For each girl, we give them a camera to keep because it is a gender-based barrier to employment. It's not enough to give them just photography skills or storytelling skills. We have to build up their confidence. We have to build up that business skills that they lack. These girls are coming out of university programs, but because they're theoretical in nature, there's that huge gap in skills and tools that they need to succeed. And so that's where we fill that gap.
Yeah. Yeah. Thanks for that story, Amina. I mean, it's really impactful, and I mean, it's real what you're able to do, and very tangible. So I'm wondering also, with GiveWise in the picture, I'm wondering how they've impacted cameras for girls, and how has GiveWise helped you achieve the impact that you're working to create and working towards this goal of 30,000 girls by 2030.
Absolutely. So I'll answer yeah, it is a big goal. And my board chair keeps on saying, are you sure about that? I'm like, if you don't have a big goal, like a hairy, audacious goal, then you might as well give up, because without something guiding you, a guiding post to get there, you'll never get there. So you have to put it out there. Maybe we will, maybe we won't. I mean, look how far behind the SDGs are. But the beauty of all these organizations coming together to do that work, right, with impact investing or with different charities doing the work, that's where the magic happens. And so the marriage between us and GiveWise has been incredible. I think, Jessica, we joined 2 years ago when you were first new. We were introduced by a friend who also works for a competing, actually, donor-advised fund. But because of our international scope, they couldn't support us. So they recommended us to meet with Tammy at GiveWise. And it was immediate that, this was the platform for us, because they could support our goals. They could introduce us to people that we would never otherwise be introduced to. They could allow us a platform that could, accept different denominations, different kinds of ways to donate through that donor-advised fund. And now with their new platform coming out soon, which Jessica hasn't talked about yet, but I'm going to mention it because I'm so excited, their Give Genius platform, now I'll be able to attract donors that can give crypto, flow through shares, securities, interact, like so many ways. And for us, that's exciting, because now we can go out to our donor base and say, hey, we're going to meet you where you're at, instead of you having to meet us where we're at, which is limited options, right? And when you're trying to fundraise, and it's a consistent competition, if you will, you have to be open to all these different ways that people can come to you. And having a bigger platform, having all these options also invites other people to say, oh, well, I didn't consider that I could do crypto, which is now legal through this platform, to your charity. Because otherwise, it would have been a scary investment for us either, because it's vetted for us now. We don't have to worry about the vetting either.
Yeah, yeah. And just also being mindful of time here, Jessica, I'm wondering if I can pull you in quickly to share a link in the chat on how people might sign up for GiveWise and support some of the action that's happening with Cameras for Girls. If you want to say a word or two on that. But Amina, thanks so much for sharing here.
Thank you.
Yeah, absolutely. I wanted to share my screen very, very quickly. Okay. Can you all see that? So this is just an image of like what a GiveWise giving fund is. And I do want to say thank you, Amina, for your kind words and all the work that you're just doing. It's just amazing, and it's been such a great partnership. So to actually give, it's pretty easy. You just would have to create an account. So we have a sign up here, personal, business, or charity. Very easy. Like I said, within like 2 minutes, you could literally sign up, forget all that paperwork, all of that stuff. And just giving you an idea of what the giving fund looks like. So as you can see, there's about $5,000 in my giving fund right now. I can look at all my activity of all the charities I give to. And if I want to find a charity to give to, there's all of the Canadian registered charities are in this platform. You can even look through, human rights, healthcare, all of these categories. But doing that is still gonna give you a large list of folks. So it's always better to actually type it in if you could, if you know. And here we go. We see Camera for Girls. I can make it my favorite, and I can go right in there and I can give. So easily putting in the gift, you can make it recurring if you'd like. Again, we don't charge fees. However, if you do want to help GiveWise in a transaction fee, depending on how much money you put in there, we'll suggest a courtesy payment, which you do not have to pay if you don't like. And then you can select the purpose of the gift. So it's really that easy. And then you can get your tax receipt here. So it's really that simple. As I said, like we try to make it so accessible and so transparent.
Yeah, no, that was super, super clear walkthrough, Jessica. I mean, it seems like I could just get on the computer and have that going within a few minutes. So thanks so much, Amina and Jessica, for sharing your stories and giving us a walkthrough of GiveWise. I'm just recognizing, Harv, it's getting a little dark over there for you. So I'd love to do a quick intro, if you want to introduce yourself again and tell us a little bit more about Build Smartr. I'm not sure if you want to give a little tour or video of the space that you're in, but the floor is yours, Harv.
Yeah, thank you for that. Yeah, like I said, my name is Harv. I'm the CEO and founder of Build Smartr. My background was in construction. I have been in job sites my whole life, and I just realized, like many of us, that housing hasn't really changed. And it's so inefficient. There's so much waste being produced. It's so costly. So around 2018, I figured, okay, what can I do to kind of, make a difference in this space? And the idea was, let's use the latest technology, which is 3D modeling and robotics, to actually build homes and try to kind of find the fastest, easiest way to build a wall, which is really the Lego block of any building. So fundamentally, what we decided to do was take more of a outside of the box approach. Rather than looking at just timber as like a material, we tried looking at different materials, and we realized that steel, specifically light gauge steel, is actually really cost effective. It's fully recyclable, so you can recycle it an infinite number of times, and it's also non-combustible. We want to build homes that are a little bit more resilient. If there's an area that has a forest fire or some flooding issues, we need to build these buildings that can hopefully last a longer time. So yeah, that's kind of what we do. We've finished over 25 projects in BC. We're currently at the tallest prefab steel building in Canada, which is at 8 stories, which is almost finished. And I can definitely kind of, it's a little bit dark, but I can definitely kind of do a little walkthrough here.
Sure, yeah. So if you want to do your walkthrough now, feel free to go ahead. But kind of what I love between the conversation happening is we have Build Smartr and Harv, which is your traditional for-profit business, but also ingrained with a foundation of impact. And then we have a charitable organization like Cameras for Girls, which is charitable giving and having impact from a different lens. So we have a nice contrast. But yeah, Harv, if you want to give a walkthrough, it's up to you. I recognize it's a bit dark over there, so.
I'll give a walkthrough. And yeah, to speak further on that in terms of the impact piece, really our goal as a for-profit business is to bring that value to the clients. It just so happens to be that it's making an impact. And that's kind of a part of the business strategy. It's kind of like taking cars to go electric. It just happens to be the best strategy and the best idea. At the same time, it's making a big impact. And that's how we feel like we can kind of scale up and really kind of prevent, deforestation as much as possible. Yeah, I'll give a quick little walk through here. They actually just closed the doors on me here. It's getting super dark here. I'm not sure if everything. No, I'm good. Yeah, so I'm not sure if your team can see that. They just locked the doors on me.
No
But yeah,
worries.
that's 7 floors of recycled steel being used for the construction of the senior care facility. It has to be a non-combustible building. They had some fire issues previously. We're actually a couple of workers actually passed away, unfortunately, during the fire here. So yeah, this is kind of our building here. All these walls. I'm not sure if your team can see the walls on the ground there. There's a lot of walls there that are labeled and numbered, and the team that's on site, they know exactly where those walls go. So everything has been essentially pre-planned. Everything is stacked according to numbers. When they start work, they know exactly where that wall goes to try to be as efficient as possible on site and really reduce that level of skill required on site. What we're seeing is not many young people going into construction. There's just a lack of skilled trades. In order to kind of increase that talent pool, one of the best ways is to actually lower the barrier to entry. So we're trying to make it very easy on site to kind of put these buildings and these homes together.
Yeah.
This is project here.
No, it's super cool to see it live and see it going up and a really tangible impact in terms of one of the biggest issues that we're facing here in Canada are forest fires. And so thinking about, designing buildings that from their foundation don't give way to those fires is really amazing. And the modularity also, Harv, with the designs that you're putting together. I think, you talk about the workforce, but I think on the side of the environmental impact that buildings have, there's much less waste when you plan things so exactly, you know exactly where the material is going, exactly how much you need. There's very little environmental impact and waste from the building process, which is what I love about Build Smartr's model. So Harv, I just have one more question for you here, but I'm curious, why did you decide to raise funds for Build Smartr and for this project through Goparity instead of, let's say, like traditional banking system?
Yeah, so there's a couple of things. Number one, we have quite a lot of line, and works is they are giving you essentially credit limits based on your previous year's financials. So we're taking these projects that were kind of $1 million contracts. Now we're going into $2, $3, $4 million contracts and multiple of these contracts. And they're essentially giving us credit limits based on the past 12 months, not the upcoming 12 months. So they can only kind of give us so much, kind of line of credit. But the projects that we're getting are getting bigger and bigger, and we essentially need to ramp up that cash flow. The second thing we also looked at very briefly was kind of crowdfunding through kind of an equity lens.
Mhm.
We found that we never went that direction because we want to put something out there that we ourselves will invest in. And when it comes to equity, a lot of these companies, they don't ever get a chance to go public. The money is never paid back. We want to have a system where, when we go to, some of our kind of contacts, that we get them to invest in something that has kind of this like guaranteed like set rate and set return. At the same time, we're not having to give up any equity, which for us is, we're kind of in this for the long term and want to keep as much equity as possible.
Yeah, yeah. That's really great perspective, and I think a great time to revisit our conversation with Emily here. So, Emily, if someone was interested in investing in Build Smarter and supporting their mission that they're on, how might they do so? If you want to share some of the sign-up steps and what role Goparity is playing in helping them raise those funds.
For sure. I will pop our website link in the chat. Basically, first, I would encourage anyone who doesn't know Goparity to kind of just check out our website, see what we're all about, see the impact we've created globally, and also what we've done in Canada as well. And then you'll be able to see our open investment opportunities and, of course, read all about Build Smarter. Just a little bit of context about Goparity for those who might not know. Goparity was started in 2017 in Lisbon, Portugal, now has two arms. So we have Goparity Europe and Goparity Canada. So the concept for Goparity Canada was actually started in 2021. Myself and two other Canadian co-founders saw a huge need for it here, kind of based on everything I spoke about earlier today. And for 2 years, we worked with Canadian securities regulators to figure out how we could bring this model into Canada and shape it for Canadian businesses and for Canadian investors. And we launched Goparity Canada in the summer of 2023. So when you do visit our website, you'll kind of see that context as well. And so to get started with us, to actually make an investment or to buy a gift card for someone else, and I'll loop back to that one, you just need to create an account. So just like you would with any traditional finance platform, we have our newly opened Build Smarter project. We have all of the investment terms right up front, so you can see that you'll be invested for 2 years, but you get monthly repayments. It's a 6.65% interest rate. When you click into the project, you can learn all about it, see like any pictures, read about the description, the company itself, see the impact here, the impact indicators and the contribution to the SDGs. And to get started with us, you just click open an account. It's about a 15 to 20 minute sign-up process. So we just need a little bit of personal and financial information like you would with any investment account. And then you have a Goparity e-wallet. So you can add funds to that e-wallet. And that you can do through bank transfer or even just e-transfer. And then you can use that money to invest in projects. And you can also use it to buy a gift card for someone else. So I am going to mention our gift cards because it's holiday season and we're running a special promo for December. So when you're logged in on your user dashboard, there's a big green button that prompts you to purchase a gift card, and you can just input however much you want to spend and write their name, and then you just get an email which you can forward to the giftee with instructions on how they can redeem it. So you can basically save the wrapping paper and give the gift of impact. Plus, for every gift card purchased, we're donating $1 to Jasper Community Team Society for wildfire recovery efforts in Jasper. And if you want to just go ahead and make an investment yourself, once again, you just create an account and then you would click on Build Smarter's project, read all about it. and then click invest and contribute however much you want to. Minimum investment amount is $10, so super accessible and easy to support them.
Perfect. Well, that brings us to the end of the webinar today. I mean, what a great conversation from both the end of philanthropy and impact investing. I'm sure if anyone has questions, we can stick around a couple minutes longer to answer them. Otherwise, so feel free to drop that in the chat if you do have a question. Otherwise, I do want to say thank you so much to all the 4 speakers from all the organizations that we had here today: Cameras for Girls, Build Smartr, GiveWise, and Goparity. You know, what an amazing conversation that we're having around this idea of money for good, and we're seeing it manifest in so many different ways. Even something as traditional as charitable giving and philanthropy is going through this kind of new evolution and new phase with what GiveWise is implementing, and they're making it so much more accessible, not just to give, but to be able to integrate that into your financial planning. So thanks so much, Jessica, for sharing that perspective. And Amina, you know, what you're doing with Cameras for Girls is amazing. The impact is really profound. And Emily and Harv, thanks so much for sharing on the investment side. I think with investing, we haven't seen impact as integrated in the past. It's all been about return, return, return. And so to see this nice pairing of return and impact is beautiful. So on that note, I'll close off the conversation, and we can end the webinar.
Comment, is it possible?
Yes, yes.
Yeah, Emily, I had no idea that there's a donation going to Jasper, because the community of Jasper actually reached out to us a few months ago regarding building non-combustible homes. So we should be having some news and some update on that sometime next year. So they're currently doing this whole excavation phase, and they're going to excavate all these properties, and then sometime next year they're going to start kind of this construction phase. So yeah, they reached out to us about building non-combustible homes. Actually, this is probably in August or something, a few months ago. So yeah, that's interesting that you kind of mentioned that piece. I had no idea until right now.
This makes so much sense. What great alignment. That's amazing to hear. And yeah, it really is like the future, what you're working on. It's so unfortunate how much wildfire is impacting us, especially on our West Coast and in Alberta. But unfortunately, it's just going to become a larger and larger threat. So we really need to protect our buildings against it. So that's incredible to hear.
Yeah, totally. And one of the biggest pieces for that is actually the insurance. Because what happens is when there's an active forest fire, essentially they can't get insurance to make a sale of that project or that house. And then in some areas, like in California, for example, and Florida, the big insurance companies are actually leaving the state entirely due to forest fires, and they can't make a profit off of it because there's too many homes being damaged. It's just a huge piece that needs to be fixed. And one of the pieces, I mean, there's multiple kind of parts to it. One of the pieces is just to build homes that are more resilient. So yeah, they can get damaged by fire, but the structure will still be standing. And there's studies and third-party testing done regarding steel structures and how the structure will still be standing there. Just like the melting point of steel is just significantly higher than the temperature of a forest fire.
Thanks so much, everyone.
And thank you. This is a really amazing conversation.
Yes, this was amazing to hear.
Thank you so much.
So much great work happening.